Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. So in this video, we are going to dive into one of the most important building blocks in Python, which are lists. So through this video, I'll be able to teach you guys how you need to create lists, how you access them, how you modify their elements, and perform basic operations like adding, removing, and sorting. So generally, I wanted to create one full-length video regarding lists, but I decided to divide it into two sections. This would be the part one for the list material for Python, which I would be teaching you guys today. So what do I think of teaching today is that you guys would have a general introduction regarding what are lists in Python, how you could access them and do some basic operations in lists, like as we did basic operations on strings. And then for the second part of the video, what we would be doing is that we would simply be using for loops and if else in lists and discovering tuples and slicing lists, etc. But that would create a very big length of a video, approximately an hour long. So that's why I thought of creating two separate videos for this. So I'll name my file as l1.py. So generally, to give you an introduction for what is a list, you guys need to know that as arrays in C++, Java or JavaScript, in Python we have lists. So a list is generally a collection of items in any particular order, and the items could be anything. They can be the letter of alphabets, they can be digits from 0 to 9, or the names of any people or anything you want. And in Python we use square brackets to indicate lists, and each element in a list is separated by a single comma, and it is and an element is denoted by single quotes. So just as we declare any other variable in Python, we would write we would use the same way to create a list. So let me comment this out: creating a list. So let's suppose we could create a list of bicycles. Now this would be our list's name, which would be in this case, and then we use the equal to sign and then use square brackets to indicate that we are creating a list. Now by default this is an empty list yet, so we could add items in it by using single quotes and add names of different bicycles, which could be Trek in this case. And then you separate the other element from the first element using a comma to indicate that you are adding a new or creating a new element in a list. And the other one could be of any name, for example red line. And then what we could have for bicycles, specialized bicycles. And other than that we could go for a Cannondale, yes. So now this is how a list is in Python. Now here it is the name of a list, which is bicycles in this case. Then we use the equal to sign to assign the data which we need to introduce in our list. So the name of the list is bicycles in this case. Then we introduce the square brackets to denote that we are introducing a list. Now by default it was an empty list, but we added elements in it, which is for example the first element we added was Trek, the second element was red line, the third element was specialized, and the fourth element was Cannondale. Now if you pass this list name to the print function, it would print all the elements of the list, just as we saw in strings. And now when I run my program, you guys can see that our list is printed out on our screen in the same manner in which we created the list. And now for your information, for people who have prior knowledge to programming, they would know that in that indexing starts from 0. Like this element Trek is not at position 1, it is at position 0, and then this element red line is at position 1. So we generally count from indexing counts from 0, and the size counts from 1. And it's an important point, so it's better that I comment it out. So indexing starts from 0. Yeah, so now moving on, we could also like I showed you guys how to print a complete list, but we could also print individual elements uh, inside from a list, and we could say that we are accessing elements from the list. And to do so, what we do is that we generally uh, we call the print function, then we pass it the list's name, and then along the list name we use the square brackets and write the index which we need to print. Like for example, if I write print bicycles index, like for example, if I write print bicycles and in square brackets I write 0, so that would print out the element at index 0, which would be trek in this case. So for an example, for this case, we wrote the name of the list, then we use the square bracket to indicate that we are accessing an element of a list, and then we write 0. This shows that we are accessing element at index 0 of the list. And now when I print this, it has print out the data which was stored at element 0, which is trek in this case. And the same you could do for any other element. For example, if I do it with index 1, it should print red line in this case, and with any other index it would do the same. So now moving on, um, as we learned the title function for strings in the last lesson, so we could also use this uh, title function, upper function, lower function in a list also. For example, if I use print bicycles at index 0 and I use the title function along with that, it would simply turn around the t from lowercase to uppercase. So using title function. So functions can be used anywhere in Python. You just need to get familiar that how do you use it simply. So when I use the print function and inside it I pass bicycles, and for example at index 1 we have red line, and then using the dot operator I access the function title. So now it would print out the element at index 1, which is red line in this case, but the R would be uppercase. As you guys can see that the R is uppercase in our output. So this shows that we can simply use functions, and we could also use any other function. For example, the upper function, it would turn around the whole letter to the uppercase, and lowercase would turn around the complete uppercase letter to lowercase letters simply. So as you guys are now familiar that we could now access elements in list. So for example, you have a very large list and you don't know what is the size of the list or how many indexes are there in the list, and you want to access the last element in that list. So you simply write the list name and pass -1 as an index number. It would simply return the last element in the list in that case. So commenting out, accessing the last element in the list. So for that, as I told you guys, you write the print function, then you write the name of the list, and then for the index you write -1, and this should print out Cannondale in this case. So as you guys can see in the output screen, it returned the last element of the list. Yeah, and we could also use f strings for to combine a message with the element in the list. For example, my first bicycle was a trek. So we would generally use a f string to combine the message with our element that we have in a list. and I could show you guys how you could do it. So using an appropriate title would be using uh, values from a list. So as we have created our list bicycles, I would now create a new variable which would be message. And now inside this message, what I want is an f string. And now inside double quotes, I would simply write my first bicycle was. Now as I told you guys, now to access a element in an f string, we would use curly braces and then pass the variable that we have created. So this would be in this case bicycles, which would be the name of the list, and then at index 0 we have the element trek, and I would generally want it to be and I would generally want it to have the first letter to be uppercase. So now this would print the following message that my first bicycle was a trek, and now I could use the print function to simply print this message. As you guys can see that we have now got the output on the screen that my first bicycle was trek. So this is how you could experiment with different approaches while learning. You could simply create a list and you could test your understanding from previous lessons, from what you learned regarding strings, what you learned regarding numbers in that case. And as in other programming languages, we could change, add, modify, or remove elements from a list. You could also simply do the same in Python. So now moving on to the next section of our lesson, which would be modifying elements. By the way, modifying a list would be suitable for this case. So now I tend to create a new list. By the way, let me create a new file for this thing. Yeah, so modifying a list. And now we could create a new list. We could name it motorcycles. So what we could do in this list is that we could have names of different popular brands of motorcycles, which could be a Honda for the first element, then Suzuki for the second element, and Yamaha for the third element. So now we have created a brand new list, and the name of the list is motorcycles, and now inside this list we have three elements. At index 0 we have the name of the motorcycle brand Honda, at index 1 we have Suzuki, and at index 3 and at index 2 we have Yamaha. So generally the first thing I would do is to print the list itself, and we have returned the same list that we have created. So now moving on, now to modify the element of a list, what we need to do is that to modify, you just simply assign a new uh, element to a specific index. And how you do so is that, for example, your list name was bicycles as of the previous case. So you would write the name of the list, then you would indicate the index to be modified, and then you write the data which you want to be overwritten with the previous one. So for example, if I write motorcycles, then I choose index 0, which contains Honda at the first case. So now I want to replace Honda with any other brand, which could be so for a motorcycle brand, we could go with any other brand, for example XYZ. So it would replace or overwrite Honda with XYZ, or we could do Ducati in this case. This would be much better. Yeah, so now when I print this list, it would return me the new list that would have Ducati as the first element of the list rather than Honda. So what is wrong with this? Also, we have a wrong indent over here. This would be in single quotes and same. Yeah, so as you guys can see that our new list has Honda overwritten by Ducati as we modified the list. So moving on, you could also add elements to the list. So the most simplest thing to do would be to add the element to the end of the list. That would simply mean to append the list using the append function in Python. So adding a element to a list. So we use the append function to add any element to the end of the list. So for example, I want to add Ducati at the end of the list rather than the start of the list. So let me comment this out so that our list remains the same. So I would simply write the name of the list, then use the append function, and then pass what I want to append to that list's end, which would be Ducati in this case. So now when I print the list, there would be a new index created in this list, the third index, and that would store a new data which would be called Ducati. And now when I print the list, you could see that we have a new list created with Ducati appended at the end of the list. So this is how you append elements to a list and modify elements to the list. And the same you could do, for example. If you create an empty list, you could append individual elements from the start, for example, Honda, Suzuki, and Yamaha for this case. So, and to insert a element to a specific position, we use the insert function. We specify the index where we want to insert our data, and then we write, and then we pass it two arguments in the insert function. We first pass the index where the data needs to be overwritten or to be added, and then uh, for the second argument, we write the data that needs to be added for that list. So inserting a element at a position. So to do this, what we do is that we use the name of the list, then we use the insert function. For the first argument, we pass the index to be inserted, and for the second argument, we pass the data to be inserted. This would be how you would add an element to a list at a specific position. So for example, I comment the previous statements and I want to insert Ducati at index 1 and I want Suzuki to be shifted at index 2. So I would simply write the name of the list, use the insert function, and inside this function I would specify the index where I want to insert Ducati, which would be index number 1, and here I would pass my data, which would be Ducati in this case. And now when I print out the list, you could see that we have a list that has a modified. So now here you guys can see the original list, which has only 3 elements, and Suzuki is at index number 1. But then I used the insert function to insert Ducati at index number 1, so it shifted Suzuki to index number 2 and took place at index number 1. So that is how you insert a element at a specific position in a list in Python. And now we should move on to deleting a element from a list. So as you guys now have a fair idea how we use the uh, append function, how we modify the specific position, and how we use the insert function, you could also, so now we would use the delete function. So for the delete function, you pass the delete keyword, and then you write the name of the list, and then you simply pass the index from where you want to delete the specific data. So that would go. So you do not write the complete word delete, you simply write del, and then you write the list name and the index to be deleted. So now I would delete Ducati, which is at index 1. So for that, what we would do is that I would simply write del, and then I would write the name of the list, which is motorcycles, and pass it the index 1. So this would delete the element at index 1 from my list. So now when I print out my list, it should return me the original list that we had created at the start of our file. Yeah, so now Ducati has been successfully deleted, and we have the original list retained as we created it at the first place. And the same you could do with any other data at any other index. But specifically, if you want to delete from the last index, you would simply use the pop function. That would simply delete the elements at the last index of the list. So to delete the last, by the way, to delete from the end of the list, we use pop function for lists in Python. So how you generally use the pop functions is that you could simply write the name of the list and then use the dot operator to access the pop function, and it would simply return you a list with the last element removed from the list. So as we had deleted Ducati already, we have the original list right now, which was this in the first case. So now when I would be using the pop function, it would remove Yamaha, and we would simply have a list with 2 elements, that would be Honda and Suzuki. So now to pop out element from the list, I would write the name of the list, use the dot operator to access the pop function, and just pass this function without any arguments. So now when I print my list, you guys could see that the last element Yamaha was removed, and now we have a new list that has only 2 elements and 2 indices, Honda and Suzuki. Yes, this would be for deletion, addition, and modifying element from the list. And you could also like use the pop function to delete the element from a specific position by passing a argument inside the pair braces. For example, if I wanted to delete Honda, in this case I would pass the index 0, and we would not have Honda, we would only have Suzuki and Yamaha. So there are 2 methods as of now to remove any elements from a list, which would be using the delete function itself or using the pop function, as we have seen. So moving on with our lesson, uh, what else do we need to cover? Yeah, so now let me create a new file for this third. topic we're going to discuss. So now we would be coming to sorting a list. What was this? Yeah. So to sort a list in Python, we use the sort function. So what basically sort method does that, it changes the order of the list permanently by arranging all elements in alphabetical order. So for example, if I create a list of cars and inside the list I add multiple car makers names, for example BMW for the first for the zeroth index, and then I add uh, Audi, and then I add Toyota. What is wrong with Toyota? Yeah, and then I would add Honda again. So as you guys can see that they are not in alphabetical order. To be in alphabetical order, uh, Audi should be at the first position in the list, then it should be BMW, then it should be Honda, and then it should be Toyota at the end of the list. So to sort the list, what I need to do is that, so to sort the list, what we do is that we simply write the name of the list. So functions in Python are really easy. As soon as you try to experiment with different varieties of creating lists and using different functions, you would get a lot of practice with making simple lists and using strings and strings, so that your basics get really strong. As what I have thought is that till I teach you guys to object-oriented programming in Python, I would then uh, make you guys learn towards how to create your own web server using Flask and creating a game in Python, which I aim to do so in another playlist after creating this playlist till object-oriented programming, because I don't think that data structures and algorithms are really needed for Python as for my case, because I did it in C++ already. But if Python is your first language, so I would prefer that you do study data structures and algorithms in Python so that you get a knack of problem solving and tackling hard interview questions. So to so where was I? Yeah. So we write the name of the list and use this sort function in this case. So now what we need to do is that we need to write the name of our list, which is cars, and then we would use the sort function. So now this has sorted the list in alphabetical order. So now when I print the list, you would see the list sorted in alphabetical order, which is Audi in the first place, then BMW, then Honda, and then Toyota. So alphabetical order or group or chronological order, whatever you may say, but this is how the sort method generally works. And for example, if you want to reverse sort a list, by reverse sort I mean that you want to sort a list in an uh, in a non chronological method. For example, Toyota being the first element, and then Honda being the second element, then BMW, and then Audi being the last element. So you would simply pass reverse is equals to true to the sort method. So generally to sort this list in reverse alphabetical order, we just need to pass the argument reverse is equals to true to the sort method. So this would simply reverse the alphabetical order for the list of cars that we have created. So let me show you guys how to do it. So to reverse sort a list, just pass reverse is equals to true, and t needs to be capital in this case. So I again write the name of my list. I again use a sort function, and as an argument I pass reverse is equals to true. And now when I print the list, we could see that it is reverse sorted by Toyota. being the first element, then followed on by Honda, then BMW, and then Audi in this case. So now, moving further, what we could do is that now there is a bit difference. There are two types of sorting techniques in Python. One is the sort function we used. So what this does is that it permanently sorts the list. But if we use the sorted function in Python, we could retain our original list and just temporarily sort our list. So to so for example, if you want to maintain the original order of a list but you want to present it in a sorted order, we could use the sorted function. So what would the sorted function do is that it would simply let you display your list in a particular order, but it generally won't affect the original or the actual order of the list. So for example, if I write a message that here is the original list, let me comment all of this out so that we get the original list back. Yeah, and to print the original list, I would simply print cars, and then I pass a message that here is the list temporarily sorted. So to have a list which is temporarily sorted, what I need to do is that I simply need to print, call the print function. Inside I need to pass a sorted function, and inside it I pass the name of my list. So this would just sort it for this display only. For the actual list, it will not change it. And as I could show you guys how it won't change, because when I pass this these lines again, it would give me the original list back again. Yeah, so as you guys can see, here is the original list, which contains the letters as we created, and then the sorted list in temporary chronological order contains Audi, BMW, Honda, Toyota. But as it was temporary, that is why the original list retains the same list that we had created. But if I had used the permanent sorted function, the sort function in this case, so what this would have done is that it would have sorted the list completely. So cars.sort and print cars. So now the original list would again be the one that would have been sorted in actual. As you guys can see, the original list was the one we created, and then when I use the permanent sort function, it permanently sorted the list in alphabetical order, and then when I again called the original list, it again gave me this list that had been permanently sorted in an alphabetical order. So this is the difference between sorted and using the sorted function, which temporarily sorts a list, and using the sort function, which permanently sorts a list. And you could also reverse the original order of a list using the reverse method. For example, if we originally stored the list of cars in chronological order according to when we owned them, we could easily rearrange this list into reverse chronological order. So for example, I showed you guys using the reverse equals to true function uh, for the sort case. But for example, I don't want it. I simply want the list to be outputted, printed out in the reverse order. So what I would do in that case would be use the reverse function. So I would simply write the list name, Then I would use the reverse function. This would reverse my list, and now when I print the list, it would print the elements of the list starting from the last element. Yeah, so it starts off with Honda, then Toyota, then Audi, and then BMW. As the list, when reversed, has this order from the backwards, which you guys can see that it is true in this case. And using the length function, we could also find the length of a list. And you guys need to also know that as, as I guys as I told you guys earlier that indexing is from 0, but counting elements is from index from 1. So BMW is at index 0, but when you count the element in the list, you count BMW at position 1 rather than index 0. Just like this is a small difference between counting and indexing in arrays or lists in other programming languages. So if I find the length of the list, it would be 1, 2, 3, and 4 because it has 4 elements. But if I access individual elements, that would be from index 0, 1, 2, and 3. So now to find the length of the list, what I need to do is that I just need to pass a length function, and now inside this I need to pass the name of the list. So what this would do is that it would simply have the it would simply store the length of the list. So when I pass it to the print function, the length of the list, you guys can see that it has returned 4 in this case, which means that we have 4 elements which are true in this case because we have 4 elements in our list which are BMW, Audi, Toyota, and Honda. Yeah, so I think this would be it for this lecture on list, and for the next lecture it would be a much more comprehensive one for the part 2 regarding lists because that needs much more attention. I would be introducing more functions. Along with that, I would be teaching you guys how to use if else and for loops in list to print specific elements, and we would go into much more detail for the next lesson. So that's it for today, guys. Do like, share, and subscribe the channel.